I've only been to Maputo once before, and it was a fleeting visit. This is my first proper visit with Goodbye Malaria, and the Goodbye Malaria team said to me, Dan, would you like to have a look at the city? I thought, yes, that'd be great. A nice leisurely start to my trip to Mozambique. So what have they done? They've stuck me in a tuk-tuk, and we're hurtling at relatively high speed through rush hour traffic on a Tuesday evening. But you know what? It's vibrant, it's exciting, the city looks fantastic. I think it's going to be a pretty cool day.
If home is the mean streets of Gauteng, then one of the first things you notice that's missing in Maputo is road rage.
So one of the things I've loved about our short drive through Maputo so far, if this had been Johannesburg, there would have been about 35 guns pulled by now. But there's no aggression while driving. Everybody just kind of gets on with it. It's a little passive-aggressive, but generally, we're all going to get there. We won't get too worried about it. It's a much, much calmer place to drive than downtown Joburg.
The city reminds me of growing up in Harare, which is where I first heard of a rather famous Mozambican.
Samora Machel is celebrated, and rightly so, as one of the great African leaders. But what not many people know is that he had another terrific attribute. As well as being the leader of Mozambique, he was also the president of the Mozambican Cricket Umpires Association.
From Mozambique's Maré Erasmus to Maputo's Burj Khalifa, it's a city of history, of beauty and of calm.
Now, as we jumped into the tuk-tuks, what the locals told me was that I needed to be brave and I needed to be patient because we were into rush hour and the traffic was going to be ferocious. But with due apology to Maputo, I would love your ferocious rush hour traffic any day. Give me William Nicholl or give me Maputo at 5 o'clock in the evening. Mozambique, you've got my vote.
My guides Miguel and Kiri sketched out the history of the city in some detail, and it wasn't too long until I was feeling like Dan, professor of Mozambican history.
A key part of getting to know Maputo as you explore it is getting to know the history of the city, and I'm getting a crash course therein. Mozambique has had some troubled times in the not so distant past, and understanding the collision of colonial Portugal versus African Mozambique and how those two worlds, how those two cultures have come together is so important in understanding where you find yourself now in this vibrant, energetic city that is Maputo.
No one does that energy like the army of locals on the streets, doing their best to sell you Ray-Bans and Mont Blancs at suspiciously low prices, but that wasn't what I was shopping for in Mozambique. Whenever I visit a city anywhere in the world, it's the local market that's one of my first destinations. I always feel it shows the character of a place, and in Maputo that was no exception. Plenty of colour, plenty of freshness, plenty of smiles, and if I'd had the way of everybody trying to sell me stuff, my overweight baggage back to Johannesburg would have been considerable. If the market is a heartbeat of most cities, then the railway station is another, and in the case of Maputo, it's particularly iconic with a little dash of Hollywood history.
The architecture of Maputo is fabulously eclectic. There's splashes of Art Deco, there's the occasional burst of glass and aluminium, all very modern. And then there's really old touches like the one behind me. This is the train station in the heart of Maputo. Such a key part in the growth of Maputo as a city. Around about the same time as gold was discovered in what we now know as Johannesburg. And if you look at it and you think that looks ever so slightly familiar, well, you might remember that train station from Blood Diamond and Leonardo DiCaprio, who of course is frequently mistaken for me.
With my pilgrimage to Leonardo done, it was almost time for cold Mozambican beer and an obscene amount of prawns, but one last stop before that.
So this is the Natural History Museum as we come towards the end of our tour of Maputo. The attention to detail is exquisite. There are all sorts of tiny little touches that speak to Portugal, but there are also a couple of touches of Africa, which I particularly like, because the Natural History Museum is guarded by a sable and a kudu. The building behind me is now over 100 years old, 109 if I'm being absolutely specific. And that's something that's so apparent when you make your way around the city. There's just so much history, it's vivid, it's right there to see and to embrace and to enjoy. And from the guys who are with us, the locals from Maputo, they talk about everything with such pride and such intensity. Clearly that sense of history, that sense of the culture of this city is so important to the people who call it home.
And so, with the beginner's guide to Maputo done, I've fallen in love with a safe, beautiful, welcoming city, and I can't wait to come back.